Hello and welcome to Lighting Up Insights, the power of heat maps in process data visualization, the recap. Today we're going to be talking about the problem with prioritizing, what makes the difference, why the heat maps, what does the questionnaire have to do with that, where to start, and how to get answers to your questions if you have any. So let's start with the prioritization. Why do we need it? The word priority came into the English language in 1400s and it was a singular. However, several hundreds of years later, we're now using it in its other form. Now we're saying priority this, priority that. How do we navigate those priorities? Why do we need prioritization? First off, we need to know how to effectively allocate our resources. It helps our improved decision-making, alignment with goals, and overall signals impact and urgency and shows the relative importance of something compared to something else. What problems do we have with prioritization? Well, first off, not dedicating enough time and relying on the flow. Then overextending the focus, trying to solve too many problems at once. Misaligned focus, where we're addressing problems that don't have the greatest value. Lack of perspective when we are failing to consider the bigger picture. Just being distracted by minor details and little things that pop up here and there, as well as weak alignment with business goal, not linking to big business goals of the organization. And my favorite here is narrow criteria for prioritization, and most commonly prioritizing using a single criteria, which does not give enough attention to the problems that better represent other criteria. And also lack of stakeholder input. So what does make the difference if we want to tell a story? The story that we tell makes a difference, and also the images we illustrate them with. So what did we decide to do? First, we thought, okay, how do we start even prioritizing our continuous improvement efforts with the processes that we have? And we started with cataloging the processes. This is step number one. Identifying and listing the processes that need assessments. Step two is assessing each one of them on the same scale. Then we're looking into validating the assessments, ensuring input is accurate and aligns with stakeholder insights. Then we generate the heat map using the data to create a visual representation and colorful at that, to have a best representation of the performance and pain points of specific processes. And then this informs the roadmap. It is not a one-stop shop. It is not one solution, one source of truth, but it gives a lot of information, especially when it's really hard to compare things to each other using different criteria. Where did we decide to start? We decided to start with the questionnaire. The questionnaire is a simple table with values, which I will show you in just a little bit, which asks us about the process basics. We have basic information about the process, which we may use in the projects that will span out of that, such as category, population impacted, frequency, who are the subject matter experts, who are the stakeholders, and you may add anything you'd like to see here. It's all those things that are critical for you when you're working on a specific process, and we prefer to have them in one spot. And what exactly the process assessment is, it's a set of criteria which we narrowed in on process maturity, process documentation, automation level, customer experience, and fulfiller experience. Those are the things that we feel are critical for us. On this slide, I will leave some definitions of what exactly we mean when we're saying that process maturity, we think this is a standardized process or optimized, or what does it mean that process documentation is sufficient or comprehensive? Again, this is the way we decided to define those values, and the tool that I will show you in just a little bit is very adaptable. So if you'd like to change this or shorten the list, add something else, you will be able to do that. Now let's dive into the questionnaire and the heat map. So to make this relatable, Talia has generously shared with me several processes for the Medicaid process. And we're using those several basic sub-processes, not the whole big process, to illustrate better and to make this example closer to the processes you work on. And we are showing this assessment only for example, purposes. This does not represent the actual score of those processes. All right. One of the questions that I usually get when sharing this questionnaire is how granular should you go? And the answer is actually it depends. It always depends. So how big or small you want your processes to be. Sometimes you take a big one and then realize that some parts of this big process have very distinct features and are better assessed separately. So then you just split it. And sometimes you want to combine a couple of them into one bigger one. So make it relatable to your organization and understandable for the organization. How do we arrive at this? So as I've mentioned earlier, we're looking at process maturity, documentation, automation level, experience for the customer, and we're also looking for experience of the fulfiller. And for every single one of those criterions, you have a question and then several values to choose from for the response. And somewhere in the back end of the file, there are calculations. So at the end of this assessment, you'll be able to have a single score from 0 to 100 to see how mature, how transformed your process is. How exactly we're doing that? So to do this, we're using weights, criteria, and scores. So you already are introduced to the criteria, which are process maturity, process documentation, process automation, and experience. Then we have weights. Weights is the distribution of the value of one. So you split it into parts according to the relative value of this particular criterion. The sum of those weights should always be equal to 1, but if you decide to distribute them differently, you can do that. It's just the way we decided that that would make sense for our organization, so that's the way we did it. You can split it differently, and if you add any other criterion, new ones, then you can distribute the weight accordingly. And the scores are values from 0 to 100 within this within the criterion. So if we look at the process, which is completely ad hoc, the documentation is non-existent, it's fully manual, and no one is happy with that, it should give you a score of 0. And on the other side of that, if you're looking at a process that's optimized, comprehensive, fully automated, and experiences wonderful for both fulfillers and customers, then you'll get a 100. And anything else would fall between 0 and 100. What do we do next is that we add some color and we create a heat map. So here you see the visual representation and it pops out right away. And you can say that, okay, so for those processes that scored lower, they are the ones that will require more attention, that probably are documented less rigorously or are more manual than others, whereas those that are colored green, they are in a better shape and most probably do not require immediate assistance. And it just shows you all this at a glance. So for this, next slide, I picked a picture of cockpit because I think that while navigating this continuous improvement efforts, we are a little bit like pilots in a cockpit trying to react to 1,000 various indicators and lights and doing it to our best. So we are adding some color and some direction, if you wish, with adding this additional metric and bringing things together using the same set of criteria and evaluating it on the same scale. What else does it give us? So heat maps give us strategic overview, so you can have all things at a glance. Quite often we see in a room when not everyone gets a chance to have a word to say what exactly their pain points are. If you're removing those distractors, then you can have a comprehensive picture, giving everyone equal opportunity to weigh in. You can also see trends, which is super helpful, compare everything on the same scale. It helps you orient faster and also facilitates collaboration. It's best when you work together with the groups, and it helps drive prioritization. How do we advise to implement it, and how can you get the best of it? For successful implementation, we would advise to secure executive support. It's very important that you have that person or people who support and see the value in this exercise. And quite often I recommend taking a small subset of processes or a specific group to run this exercise on and show the value and then expand further. So start with pilot and then go further and then be consistent. So it's not one and done. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So you start and you keep going, at the same time staying flexible, meaning if you see that your stakeholders are struggling with something or they need a little bit more support or a little bit more time than you planned, it pays off to be more flexible at this point. And when you have their full support and buy-in, then you can look at the iterations and maybe do something differently. Maintaining focus on what exactly you're doing. And my favorite is the why you're doing that, meaning strategically why this exercise brings value. And if after 1, 2, 3 iterations you don't see it bringing value, I ask you to challenge yourself, challenge me if you like, and let's see how can it be transformed to bring the value. What is not working? What could be done differently? Because every organization is unique. Communicating early and often comes with territory, as well as measuring and showcasing results. Once you show this heat map to your leadership and wonderful, you have the roadmap, what is next? What is coming out of it? What good did it bring? Did it help the collaboration and the teamwork together? Did it bring the actual feasible results? Did it streamline the workforce planning for the specific projects and make sure that the people are available to work on them and everyone understands the priority? So look for those results and always showcase them to help further your cause. So the other thing that I want to leave you with is that, and probably my favorite out of all this, we live in a world of AI, technology, but no matter how advanced the tools are, no matter how great they are, how much you believe in them, tools don't change behaviors, only conversations do. So start building your network of allies while you are working on prioritization, digital transformation, whatever you call your initiative, and start building this network of allies one person at a time. I'm going to stop sharing for a second to share the spreadsheet where we can take a look at the actual assessment. Now let's dive into the spreadsheet itself. Some of those things you have already seen in the presentation, such as the service process and the criteria, which is process maturity, process documentation, automation level, experience for the customer, experience for the fulfiller. However, there are some things that you have not yet seen, and I will unhide them in a second. So what hides behind those hidden columns is the values. So for every drop-down value that has been selected for a specific criterion, there is a value that represents now let's look at the spreadsheet itself. Some of those fields and categories are familiar to you. You have already seen the categories and you have already seen some of those definitions. However, there is something that's hiding in some columns that you have not yet seen, and I will unhide it in a second. And now you can see that for every response that you give related to specific criterion, there is a set of values, and every value comes with a score. The scores are represented in the calculator values tab. Here you can see the criterion, specific values, and then the scores that represent the value under this criterion. The idea is that if you have a process that is completely ad hoc, documentation is non-existent, the process is manual, and everyone is unhappy, it will give you a score of 0. And if you have a great process that's optimized and documentation is comprehensive, process is automated, and everyone is raving about it, that would give you 100. What you can do here, so here you, if you'd like, you can change specific values. So here you see the score, the single score is 6, but if I change the automation level to automated, it will make it 31 here. How it's happening is because there is a specific formula. You can see it here. It's completely transparent. So if you would like to make any changes or distribute weights differently, you'll be able to do that within this document. What else you can do? You can create a new assessment. So here I left 3 processes without the assessment. Let us do it here. So let's say this is an ad hoc process. Documentation is insufficient and it is supported. There is some sort of automation available and it is satisfactory, but no one is like super happy with it. And you see the score appears here. You can keep playing with this tab as well as you may want to create your own. So I left this tab here for your use. There is a heat map prep. So you saw how I created a heat map. There are various tools to create heat maps. So you can use conditional formatting, you can use PowerPoint for those purposes. And then there are calculator values that if you'd like to change something or add different questions and different values and different scores, you can do it here, as well as add any other information about the process. So in this example, we have definition, process owner, subject matter experts, stakeholders, and business continuity, disaster preparedness score as needed. With this, I would like to conclude this recap of the session. Thank you very much for being with me. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. It's been a pleasure. Goodbye.